Ashton Sanders, a black single father, did the right thing. He saw his CEO drunk. She had no phone, no keys, and no way to get there herself. He didn't know where she lived, so he drove her home. He gave her his couch, left a note, charged her phone, and made sure she was safe, then went to sleep on his daughter's floor. The next morning, she woke up confused, in clothes that weren't hers. She instantly made a call.
I don't know where I am, and I'm not in my dress. Hurry, call the police. I am on my way too.
For a black man in corporate America, there is no room for misunderstanding. One phone call, one wrong word, and everything he had spent 7 years building could be gone before breakfast. So what did she do next, and why did it almost cost him everything? If you've ever done the right thing and feared it would destroy you, stick around. Ashton Sanders had been checking his watch all evening. Not subtly, not in the way people check the time at parties when they're bored and trying not to show it. Openly, repeatedly, with the particular focus of a man who has somewhere more important to be and is calculating, minute by minute, exactly how much longer he can stay before the math stops working in his favor. Around him, the annual company celebration was in full swing. The private dining room of the restaurant was warm and loud, glasses clinking, laughter moving through the room in easy waves. Colleagues who spent their weeks in separate departments finding each other across crowded tables and remembering why they liked each other. It was a good party. Ashton had attended 3 of them now. He knew the rhythm. He stood slightly apart from the main current of it. Jacket on, bag at his feet. The body language of a man preparing to leave. 7:43. He needed to go. Ashton Sanders was 38 years old, a senior financial analyst at Meridian Capital, and by most measures the kind of employee that companies quietly depended on, without fully acknowledging. 7 years of clean work, never late, never the subject of office gossip. The kind of man who finished what he started and didn't require managing. His colleagues trusted him. His managers trusted him. The work spoke for itself, which was exactly how he preferred it. But none of that was what he was thinking about tonight. He was thinking about Kimberly. That morning, before school, she had been almost too excited to eat breakfast. She kept leaving the table to check her costume, coming back, sitting down, leaving again. The wings had to be even. The halo had to be straight. These were not small concerns. These were technical requirements, and she took them seriously. He had been drinking his coffee at the counter when she appeared in the kitchen doorway in the full costume, chin lifted, waiting for his assessment. "How do I look?" she asked. "Like the best angel Jefferson Elementary has ever produced," he said. She considered this. "You have to say that. You're my dad. I also happen to be right." She had almost smiled, then caught herself, maintaining the gravity of the occasion. She walked to him and looked up with the focused directness that she had carried since she was old enough to form sentences. "Daddy, front row, right? Front row," he said. "Promise?" He had set down his coffee and crouched to her level, the way he did when something mattered. "I promise," he said. She had held his gaze for one more second, checking for signs of uncertainty, found none, and gone back to adjusting her wings. Standing now at the edge of the celebration, Ashton felt the memory settle in him, the way it had been settling all evening, warm and weighted at the same time. Kimberly was 8 years old. Her mother had left 4 years ago, a departure that had rearranged their lives quietly and permanently, and in the years since, Ashton had built something with his daughter that he was more proud of than anything he had ever done at a desk. They had built it together, the two of them, out of ordinary mornings and kept promises, and the kind of consistency that a child either has or doesn't in the person they depend on most. He refused to be the kind of father who let her down on a night like this. He picked up his bag. 7:46. If he left right now, he would make it with time to spare. He was 3 steps from the door when he saw her. Emily Johnson was standing near the far end of the bar, and something was wrong. Ashton had worked under Emily's leadership for 3 years. He knew what she looked like when she was composed, which was almost always the kind of quiet authority that didn't need volume to fill a room. Tonight was not that. Her glass was being refilled, for what was clearly not the first time. Her posture had the slight wrongness of someone working harder than usual to hold themselves upright. When she set her glass down, she missed the edge of the bar by an inch. He had heard the whispers, the way everyone had. The divorce finalized a few months ago. 10 years, no children. Her ex-husband had not been quiet about his reasons for leaving, and the information had made one devastating circuit around the office before people agreed without saying so to leave it alone. Looking at her now, Ashton understood that she had not left it alone. She was carrying it tonight, visibly, in a room full of people who had noticed and decided, each privately and collectively, that this was not their situation to enter. He watched a colleague glance at her, then find something urgent to do on the other side of the room. Then another. He checked his watch. 7:48. He kept moving toward the door. He was almost there, one hand already reaching for the handle, when he heard it. Not loud, just the particular sound of something going wrong. A sharp intake of breath from somewhere nearby. Emily had stumbled. Her purse hit the floor and its contents scattered, and when she bent to collect them, she could not fully get back up. One hand on the bar, the other pressing the floor. Nobody moved. Ashton stood at the door with his hand on the handle and his keys in his pocket and Kimberly's voice in his head, asking him to promise. He closed his eyes. 1 second. Then he turned around. Emily Johnson did not argue when Ashton took her arm. That was the first thing that told him how bad it actually was. In 3 years of working under her, he had never once seen her accept help without redirecting it, reframing it, or declining it entirely. Tonight she let him guide her toward the exit without a word. One hand on his arm, her heels uneven on the marble floor. He kept his voice low and his movements unhurried. The last thing either of them needed was an audience. In the car, he asked for her address. She opened her purse and checked it twice. "I moved last month," she said finally. "The address is in my phone." She held up the phone. Black screen. Dead battery. "I don't remember the new one yet." He asked for the building name. She thought about it with visible effort. The Caldwell. Riverside Drive. A pause. "I don't know the unit number, and I don't think I have my keys." She checked the purse again. No keys. Ashton sat with that for a moment. No address. No keys. No phone. A woman who could not stand without assistance, and nowhere he could take her where she would actually be safe. He pulled out of the parking lot and drove toward the only place left. She was quiet for most of the drive. Somewhere past the third light she said, "I don't usually do this." He said, "I know," and they left it there. Halfway to his house, she asked him to pull over. He did. He handed her the water bottle from the cup holder without comment and waited while she steadied herself against the door. When it was over, he helped her back into the seat and kept driving. His house was a single story on a quiet residential street. Not large. Not the kind of place that announced anything about itself. There was a basketball hoop in the front yard, with one bent net loop, and a half-finished puzzle on the porch that Kimberly had declared too difficult and then refused to let him put away. He brought Emily inside and settled her on the couch. Then he moved through the house with the quiet efficiency of a man who understood that the details mattered, that the morning would come and she would wake up confused and frightened, and every decision he made right now would determine what happened next. He filled a glass of water and set it on the coffee table. He found 2 aspirin and placed them beside it. He plugged her phone into the charger on the side table and watched the light come on. He found a clean t-shirt and sweatpants and folded them over the arm of the chair nearest the couch, because sleeping in a work suit was uncomfortable and he wasn't going to leave her without an option. Then he went to Kimberly's room, found the notepad on her desk, and wrote in clear block letters, "Ms. Johnson, you are at my home. You were unwell at the company party and I brought you here safely. I am in the room at the end of the hall if you need anything. Your phone is charging on the table beside you. Nothing happened. You are safe. Ashton Sanders." He placed the note on top of the aspirin where it would be the first thing she saw. Then he went back to Kimberly's room, pulled the spare blanket from the top shelf of her closet, and spread it on the floor beside her bed. He lay down. The ceiling had glow-in-the-dark stars that Kimberly had put up 18 months ago, arranged in patterns that weren't quite constellations, but were clearly something, some private map that meant something to her. His phone buzzed. "Mrs. Addo." "She was wonderful, Ashton." Standing ovation. "She asked me to tell you she saved the video so you could watch it as many times as you wanted." He stared at the message until the screen went dark. A minute passed. The phone buzzed again. Then one more time. He turned it over. The last message was from Kimberly, sent from Mrs. Addo's phone. Not words, just a photo. Kimberly on the stage, mid-performance, one arm extended in what must have been her big moment. Eyes bright, halo straight, looking directly at the camera with the complete, unguarded joy of a child doing the thing she had been practicing for 2 weeks. Below the photo, 4 words. "I did good, Daddy." Ashton held the phone and looked at his daughter's face on the small screen for a long time. Then he set it face down on the blanket. The video was still there, unopened. Mrs. Addo had said she kept looking for him in the audience, kept searching the front row for the face that wasn't there. He looked back up at Kimberly's stars. He had done the right thing. He kept telling himself that. But lying on a hard floor in the dark, while his daughter's performance sat unwatched on his phone, he couldn't stop the question from forming. Had doing the right thing just become the biggest mistake of his life? Ashton woke at 6:12 to the sound of Kimberly's door opening. She came in the way she always did, with the particular energy of a child who had decided that waking up was something worth committing to. She stopped when she saw him on the floor. "Why are you on the floor?" "We have a guest," he said. "Sleeping on the couch." She looked at the blanket, then at her bed, then back at him. "You could have slept in your own room, Daddy. I wanted to be close by." She accepted this, the way she accepted most of his decisions, without requiring the full explanation, trusting that the reason existed, even when it wasn't visible. "Can I have pancakes?" she asked. "Yes." "With blueberries?" "Always." She went to find her slippers, and he folded the blanket and stood in her doorway for a moment, before moving toward the kitchen. He could hear nothing from the living room. He would start breakfast, let Emily wake in her own time, and go from there. He had the blueberries out and the mixing bowl on the counter when he heard it. Movement from the living room. The soft, disoriented sound of someone taking in a space they didn't recognize. He stayed where he was. Then Emily's voice, low and tight, cut through the quiet of the house. "Rachel." A pause. "Rachel, I need you to listen to me." Ashton set down the measuring cup. "I don't know where I am." Her voice was controlled, but only just. The control of someone applying real effort to something that wanted to come apart completely. "I woke up in someone's house. I'm wearing clothes that aren't mine. I don't remember leaving the party. I don't remember getting in a car. I don't remember any of it." The silence that followed carried Rachel's voice. Too low for words, but not too low for register. Sharp. Urgent. The voice of someone who had already arrived at a conclusion and was building around it fast. Ashton did not move. He stood in his kitchen with both hands flat on the counter and felt the ground shift beneath him in the specific way it shifted when something he had prepared for became real. He had known this was possible. From the moment he made the decision, he had known. He had calculated it with the cold precision of a man who understood that his margin for error was not the same as everyone else's. That certain situations, regardless of what was true inside them, had shapes the world recognized and responded to before the facts had a chance to speak. A black man, a white female CEO, his house, her clothes, her missing memory. He had known. He had helped her anyway, and now he stood in his kitchen, listening to the shape of it becoming real in the next room. "His name is Ashton." Emily's voice again, the control fraying at the edges now. "He works for me. Senior analyst. I don't know why I'm here, Rachel." "I don't know what." Rachel's voice rose on the other end. Still no words, just the sharp architecture of someone issuing instructions. "I know." Emily's breathing had changed. "I know, but I don't want to." More from Rachel. "Okay. Yes, I'll call you back." Silence. Then the sound of the note being picked up from the coffee table. A long pause while she read it. Then footsteps moving toward the kitchen. Ashton turned around. Emily Johnson was standing in the entrance in his old gray t-shirt and sweatpants, drawstring pulled tight, hair loose, eyes red from a night of crying he hadn't heard but could see clearly. She had her phone in one hand and the note in the other. She looked at him. He looked at her. He kept his voice completely level. "Ms. Johnson, I need you to understand what I'm about to tell you. Not as your employee, just as one person talking to another." She waited. "I drove you here because you had no phone, no keys, and no address. I put you on my couch and slept on the floor of my daughter's room. I left that note, those clothes, the water, and the aspirin, because I wanted you to feel safe when you woke up. Nothing else happened. That is the complete truth." He paused. "I also need you to understand that what you say next, to your friend or to anyone, carries consequences that are not the same for both of us. I want you to know that I know that, and I helped you anyway." The kitchen was very quiet. Emily's phone screen went dark in her hand. She opened her mouth. And then, from the hallway, came the sound of small feet on hardwood. Kimberly appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas and slippers, hair flattened on one side from sleep, carrying the stuffed bear she had owned since she was 3 and had recently decided she was too old for but still kept on the bed. She looked at Emily with the frank, unhurried curiosity of a child who found the world generally interesting and saw no reason a stranger in her kitchen should be any different. "Good morning," Kimberly said. Emily stared at her. "I'm Kimberly. Are you the lady from Daddy's work?" Emily's mouth opened and closed once. "Daddy said you were sick," Kimberly continued, moving toward the counter with the ease of someone who knew exactly where everything in this kitchen lived. "He takes really good care of people when they're sick. One time I had a fever for 3 days, and he slept on my floor the whole time, so he could hear me if I needed him." She looked up at Emily with her father's steadiness. "He probably slept on my floor last night too, because of you." She said it without accusation, just fact. "He does that." Emily looked at Kimberly, then at Ashton, and the last remaining structure of the panic Rachel had been building with her on the phone came down. Not all at once, just quietly, the way things come down when the truth arrives in a form that cannot be argued with. Her phone screen stayed dark. She did not finish the call. Nobody moved for a moment. Kimberly looked between the two adults with the patient expression of someone waiting for the room to catch up to her. Then she turned to the counter, pulled out the step stool with her foot, climbed up, and began taking down the mixing bowl with the focused purposefulness of someone who had decided that whatever was happening between the grown-ups, breakfast still needed to happen. "Daddy was going to make pancakes," she said. "With blueberries?" She looked at Emily. "Do you like blueberries?" Emily's voice came out smaller than it had any right to be. "Yes." "Good. We always have them. Daddy buys them every week, even in winter when they're expensive." She said it the way she said everything, as plain fact, without any sense of it being remarkable. Ashton watched Emily watch his daughter. He could see it happening, the way the kitchen was landing on her. Not just the room itself, but the accumulated evidence of it. The step stool with the rubber grip worn smooth from use. The hook by the door, at exactly Kimberly's height, where her backpack lived. The reading chart on the wall with its careful pencil marks, each one dated in his handwriting. Then Emily's eyes moved to the refrigerator and stayed there. Kimberly's drawings covered every inch, layered over time, each new one going up beside or on top of whatever was already there. Horses, then robots, then houses with flower gardens, then family portraits in which Ashton was always depicted as significantly taller than he actually was. In the center, slightly higher than the rest, was a crayon drawing of 2 figures holding hands. The taller one had a speech bubble that said, "I love you, Kimmy." The smaller one said, "I love you more, Daddy." And beneath both of them, in the careful, oversized letters of a child still amazed that words could be written down, was a single word: always. Emily looked at it for a long time. "You were at Daddy's work party," Kimberly said, not looking up from the bowl. "The one last night." "Yes," Emily said. That's why he couldn't come to my performance. Not an accusation, just information, placed on the table for examination. Emily went very still. Your performance. I was an angel. It was my first time having a big part. Kimberly looked up now. Mrs. Addo recorded it. Daddy hasn't watched it yet. We were going to watch it together this morning. Emily turned to Ashton. He said nothing. He watched her take in the full shape of the previous 12 hours and place herself inside it correctly. Not the version Rachel had been building on the phone. The actual version, he had left his daughter's performance. He had slept on the floor. He had written the note and charged the phone and left the water and the aspirin. And none of it had been for any reason except that he had looked at a person who needed help and helped her. He watched her understand that. Kimberly, Emily said, I'm sorry your dad missed your performance. That was because of me, and I'm sorry. Kimberly considered this with appropriate gravity. It's okay. He's going to watch the video, and Mrs. Addo says I was really good. A pause. I was really good. Something moved through Emily's face. I don't doubt it. Ashton pulled out a chair. Sit down. I'll make coffee. Emily sat. She set her phone on the table and did not pick it up again. The kitchen settled into a different kind of quiet. Not the tense quiet of 20 minutes ago. Something that had more air in it. Why did you help me? Emily asked. Ashton kept his eyes on the batter. I already told you. You told me you couldn't leave. That's not the same as why. He was quiet for a moment. He thought about how to say it honestly without making it into a speech. Because my daughter is going to grow up in this world, he said. And I want her to believe that when someone needs help, you help them. Even when it costs you something. Even when the smart move is to walk away. He glanced at Kimberly, who was arranging blueberries with intense focus and clearly listening. I want her to believe that, because I need to believe it. And the only way I get to keep believing it is if I actually do it. Emily was quiet. You knew what it could look like, she said. A black man, your boss. My missing memory. You knew exactly what could happen. Yes. And you helped me anyway. Yes. She looked at the table, at her phone lying dark and silent. I almost called the police, she said. It came out low, like a confession. Rachel was telling me to. I had the phone in my hand. I know, he said. That doesn't make it okay. No, he said. It doesn't. They held that honestly, without either of them trying to smooth it into something more comfortable. I almost destroyed your life, she said. Over something I didn't understand yet. He turned from the stove and looked at her directly. But you didn't. She looked at Kimberly, at the refrigerator, at the word, always in purple crayon. Because of her, Emily said quietly. She walked in and I could see your whole life in 5 seconds, and none of it matched what I was afraid of. Ashton set a plate in front of her. Eat, he said. You'll feel better. Kimberly climbed into her chair and looked at both of them with the satisfaction of someone who had determined the morning was going well. The blueberries are good today, she announced. Emily looked at the plate in front of her, then at the kitchen, at the drawings and the photos and the small specific evidence of a life built entirely around loving someone else. She picked up her fork. And somewhere underneath the guilt and the relief and the residual shame of the morning, a quieter question was forming. One she hadn't expected. One that had nothing to do with Ashton's innocence or her own near-catastrophic mistake. She thought about the note he had written before he went to sleep, the water he had left, the phone he had charged, every small, careful thing he had done in the dark to make sure she would feel safe in the morning. She thought about when anyone had last done something like that for her. Not because they had to, not because it benefited them, just because she needed it. She couldn't remember. Emily stayed for breakfast. She hadn't planned to. She had meant to call a car the moment the coffee was made, collect her dress from the chair, and leave before she took up any more of a morning that already belonged to someone else. But Kimberly asked if she wanted to watch the performance video before she went, and Emily had looked at Ashton, and Ashton had given the smallest possible shrug that meant he wasn't going to make the decision for her, and she had sat back down. Kimberly propped the phone against the fruit bowl on the counter where all three of them could see it, and pressed play with the confidence of someone who had already decided the review was going to be favorable. The footage was slightly shaky, filmed from the middle of the auditorium, but Kimberly was clear and front and center, moving through her part with the complete conviction of someone who had practiced this for 2 weeks and intended to deliver every single word of it, regardless of who was or wasn't in the front row. Near the end, she looked directly at the camera. She smiled, waved once, and said, clearly enough for the microphone to catch, "I know you're watching, Daddy. I love you." Emily watched Ashton watch the screen. She watched the thing that moved through his face, private and unguarded. The expression of a man receiving something that mattered to him without knowing anyone was paying attention. He didn't reach for it or perform it. It just moved through him and settled. She looked back at the refrigerator, at the word always. She had spent 10 years in a marriage that had ended because her husband decided she was too absent to be worth staying for. 10 years building a career that had made her the youngest CEO in her firm's history. She had the title and the corner office and the profile features and the empty apartment she had moved into 6 weeks ago and not yet made feel like anything. She had believed, without ever examining it directly, that achievement and fullness were roughly the same thing. Sitting in this kitchen, she understood they were not. When the video ended, Kimberly looked up. "Good, right?" "Really good," Emily said. Kimberly nodded. "I told you." Emily left 20 minutes later. Ashton called her a car. Her dress had been rinsed and was dry enough to fold. Kimberly found a paper bag with cartoon dogs on it to carry it in, selected with specific intention, and Emily accepted it without comment. At the front door, she stopped. Ashton was in the hallway. Kimberly was beside him, leaning against his arm with the full trusting weight of someone who had never had a reason not to. Emily looked at both of them. "I owe you more than an apology," she said to Ashton. "I know that." "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Just take care of yourself." It was a simple thing to say. She thought about it in the car all the way home. When had anyone last said that to her, and meant it without wanting something in return? She wasn't sure anyone ever had. The following Monday, she walked into Meridian Capital and did her job the way she always did. But something had shifted in the way she moved through the building. She stayed in the break room long enough to actually talk to people, instead of filling her cup and leaving. She responded to emails with more than the minimum words required. In meetings, she began asking questions that weren't purely about outcomes, questions about what people needed, what was making their work harder than it had to be. Small things, but offices feel small things quickly. Ashton noticed within the first week. He said nothing about it to anyone, not even Darius, and went home to Kimberly every evening and filed the observation away without attaching a story to it. People changed for their own reasons. It wasn't his to explain. He was at his desk on a Wednesday afternoon 4 weeks later when Emily stopped beside him. He looked up. "Kimberly," she said. "Does she have any more performances coming up?" He studied her face for a moment. "Christmas play. 3 weeks from now." Emily nodded slowly. "You're going to be there this time," she said. It wasn't a question. And underneath it was something that wasn't quite a question either. Something that would take 3 more weeks to become fully visible. The Christmas play was on a Thursday. Kimberly had known this since October, and had been tracking the date with the focused attention of someone monitoring something that could not be allowed to sneak up on her. There was a countdown on the whiteboard in her room. She updated it every morning. On the morning of the play, she was up before 6. Ashton knew because he was already awake. He had checked his calendar the night before, and found it clear, not by accident. 3 days ago, Emily had stopped by his desk, said one word, "Thursday," and looked at him until he confirmed it was clear. The next morning, 2 afternoon items had been quietly moved by her assistant. No explanation, no email chain, just gone. He had sat with that for a moment before going back to work. Now he ironed Kimberly's costume while she stood on the step stool checking her wings from the designated checking spot on the bathroom tile. He confirmed they were even from exactly the right place. She adjusted her halo by what she estimated was 2 millimeters. He confirmed the adjustment was correct. They did this without irony. with the full seriousness the situation deserved. They arrived at Jefferson Elementary 40 minutes early. The front row was empty. Ashton sat in the center seat and put nothing beside him. He did not need to save it. He was already there. Before she went backstage, Kimberly found him in the front row, and her whole face did the thing it did when she was genuinely happy. The total unguarded brightness she hadn't yet learned to moderate. She held up both hands in a small wave that was only for him. He held up one hand back. She went through the door. The auditorium filled around him. When the lights went down, he straightened in his seat and thought about the last time. About lying on Kimberly's floor in the dark, with the video still unopened on his phone. About the weight of having done the right thing and the separate weight of what it had cost. He was here now. That was what mattered. Kimberly came on in the second scene. She walked to her mark with the precise confidence of someone who had rehearsed this moment so many times in her imagination that arriving there in reality felt like recognition. Wings even. Halo straight. And then she spoke her lines. Every word clear and certain. Delivered with the full conviction of someone who had decided this was worth doing and was going to do it completely. Midway through the scene, she looked out at the audience. She found him. Something in her face opened up that had nothing to do with the performance. Just her father, in the front row, exactly where he said he would be. When it ended, Ashton stood. He was not the only one, but he was one of the first. Kimberly bowed with the other children and found him standing, and her whole face was the brightness again. He put his hand over his heart. She put her hand over hers. He made his way toward the side door where the performers would come out, and he was almost there when something made him turn. At the back of the auditorium, standing against the wall where the light from the stage didn't quite reach, was Emily Johnson. Not in work clothes. A plain, dark coat, hair down, hands in her pockets. The posture of someone who had come, hoping not to be noticed. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the stage, at the place where Kimberly had been standing, with an expression that had nothing managed about it. She had not told him she was coming. She had rearranged whatever she needed to rearrange, and driven to an elementary school on a Thursday night in December, and stood at the back of the room where nobody would need to acknowledge her, because she had wanted a good father to get the moment he deserved, and had not needed anything in return for making it happen. She noticed him looking. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then she gave a small nod. The nod of someone who has done what they came to do. He nodded back. Then Kimberly came through the side door in her costume, halo askew, wings still even, and she found him the way she always found him in a room, immediately and without searching. And she crossed the distance between them at full speed, and he caught her and held her, and she wrapped her arms around his neck with the complete trusting weight of someone who had never had a reason to hold back. "You came," she said. "I told you I would," he said. "Front row," she said. "Front row," he confirmed. He held his daughter in the warm noise of the emptying auditorium and felt the evening settle around him. At the back of the room, Emily watched them. She thought about boardrooms, about quarterly projections and performance reviews and the profile features that called her the youngest CEO in the firm's history, a fact she had stopped finding meaningful sometime around the second year of a marriage she had poured herself into and lost anyway. She thought about the note Ashton had written in the dark before he went to sleep on a hard floor, making sure a stranger would feel safe in the morning. She thought about a little girl looking into an audience and finding her father's face. This was not something you could build with ambition. You could not optimize for it or schedule it or earn it through performance. It existed in the kept promises and the ordinary mornings and the kind of consistency that a child either had or didn't in the person they depended on most. Ashton had built it, out of sacrifice and steadiness and the daily decision to show up. He had built something that no title could replicate and no salary could purchase. Emily stood quietly at the back of the room and understood, for the first time in longer than she could accurately measure, what it actually meant to be rich. She slipped out before the crowd. She didn't need credit. She had already received something more valuable than that. Some people spend their whole lives collecting achievements and wake up one day wondering why none of it feels like enough. And some people spend their lives keeping promises to an 8-year-old, and somehow end up with everything that matters. If this story stayed with you, tell us in the comments. Tell us which moment hit you. Tell us if you've known an Ashton. Tell us if you've been an Emily. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. We're here every week. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the most important things you will ever do won't make headlines. They'll just make someone feel like they were never alone. We'll see you in the next one.